All right, you goddamned accursed. The ascension of Doug is over, and we're back on our regular weekly schedule with the curse of politics. Scott Reid is here as he always is, because, like Celine Dion's heart does, Scott Reid will go on. And this week on the pod, Lisa Raitt is here to mix it up with us. Lisa goddamn Raitt, everybody, let's hear it.
Ho, ho, ho.
Yay.
We have a deputy leader in the house.
Former.
Classing up the joint.
Yeah.
In case you don't remember, she's known for her keen intelligence, politeness, and professionalism. But I promise you, Scott and I are going to do our best to get her to yell at us at a minimum, and maybe even drop an F-bomb. We shall see. Today on the pod, after a month of you loyal accursed listening to us drone on about Ontario, it's a federal politics palooza. We'll have a long conversation about the Conservative leadership race. We'll transition from there to discuss Liberal leadership. In the all too mortal words of Joe Strummer, should he stay or should he go? We'll tackle the proposed gun control legislation. And finally, Bill Morneau speaks. What prompts a former finance minister to level that harsher criticism of our fiscal path? And then, after 5 long weeks, it's the much-anticipated return of Gordon Pinsent and our Hey Yous. Hey, Lisa, welcome to our little podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Don't forget, I'm from Cape Breton, so I can drop the F-bomb on occasion.
Well, yeah, that's what I hear about Cape Bretoners.
Yeah.
You know, you guys, this day, do you know Scott Reid, by the way, Lisa?
This one? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I recognize him.
This one.
I recognize him from the 2006 election.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's harsh.
He starts with a cross-check to the chiclets. Boom. Lays it on me. Okay, great. Well, that's nice. I don't remember that guy, actually. I have no memory of 2006. I threw it all out with the whiskey bottle.
So the other Scott Reid, though, David, right? I mean, Scott Reid, for me, is either my former colleague, member of parliament, or it's the lovely person on the panel now that I just insulted.
This pathetic son of a bitch,
yeah. Which one do you like more?
Oh, we'll see at the end. Let's see how it goes.
We're both from the same neck of the woods. He's down in my area. He's like sort of north of Napanee out there, and I grew up in Prince Edward County. My mom lives in Thurlow, so just on the border of his riding.
Well, he used to be higher profile than he is now. What happened to him?
Started wearing plaid vests, and I think that's always a sign of political decay. Means
when you're putting on a vest.
When you're putting on a plaid vest, I think it means you've given up as a politician. It just says, I'm not going to climb any higher. I'm done for.
He's caucus chair. He's got a big role.
Oh, okay.
He's got a big role.
You know, this day in 1975, because you're people of a certain age, you can appreciate this. This day in 1975 was one of the happiest days of my life. This is the day the Elton John album Captain Fantastic and the Brown Deer Cowboy came out. I was at the record store waiting for this thing to hit the shelves. It did not disappoint. Highlighted by Someone Saved My Life Tonight. If you haven't heard this album in a long time, go play it. You'll love it.
And that is my favorite Elton John song. David has indoctrinated me to the ways of Elton John over the years. It's impossible to be David's closest friend without becoming a passionate supporter of Elton John. And Someone Saved My Life Tonight is my favorite tune.
The Live from Australia was on permanent playlist for me when I was in university, I guess.
Yeah, isn't that a beautiful record? My God, the arrangements.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see. Celine Dion, Elton John, 1975, 2006. Is there anything else we could do to drive away any youthful listenership? Couple of references to Evel Knievel, Hindenburg.
Okay, well, let's get right to it then. Lisa, it's been a month since the Curse of Politics talked about federal politics. So we've got some pent-up energy. We're going to start with the Conservative leadership race. The membership cutoff was last weekend.
Yeah.
What's your assessment of the race?
My assessment of the race is that everybody wants to know the numbers because they want to know whether or not Pierre is going to win on the first ballot. I think that's what it comes down to. And it's a pretty formidable number that Jenny's put out there, 317,000 or somewhere around there. There are rumors that there's 600,000. But here's the big problem. The big problem is that they can't process these. They can't process them. They can't send out ballots. They can't count ballots. I mean, I don't know where this is going. This is going to be a complete shit show.
Are these the people in charge of Pearson Airport? What are you talking about? Well, why can't they get that done?
It's man work, it's man hours, it's person hours, however you want to put it. But, you got to do the checks on all the memberships. So they're about 6 to 8 weeks behind. on affirming memberships. And then from there, you got to roll right into addressing envelopes and sending it out and collecting it in. It all takes a lot of effort of people, bodies around the clock getting this done. So I am more worried about how this process is going to unroll than I am anything else.
Well, what are the implications of it? If you could walk us through.
Yep. I can tell you what's going to happen. Somebody doesn't get their ballot. And that's more than one somebody. That is like, I don't know, 50,000 somebodies don't get their ballot in time. And then they don't get to vote. And you may have noticed that there's some conspiracy theorists that may be involved in this federal conservative launch. And as a result, it just becomes one big conspiracy theory. And once again, we're drawn into it and the party can't get itself clean of that issue. And as a result, it's going to be whoever's the leader, it's going to be around their neck.
I didn't get my ballot, but I did get fluoride. What's going on at Conservative headquarters?
Or my better still, I want to vote for Trump. He's not on your ballot. What happened?
All right, Scott, what's your take? I mean, I looked at goddamn numbers. I mean, Jenny seems pretty confident about her number, right?
Yeah.
And since that number came out, two MPs peeled away from Patrick Brown toward Pierre Poilievre. And I mean, the charade campaign's play in the numbers game is essentially them saying, we don't have any numbers. I mean, just the fact that they use tens of thousands to describe their sales is an indication. So it's over, right?
Yeah, it's over. And I don't dismiss the challenges that lay ahead for the Conservative Party infrastructure in managing the torrential downpour of memberships that Jenny and Pierre Poilievre have unleashed on the party. But boy, talk about your good problems to have. And, I look at this thing and, to me, I hear Lisa say, well, I'm not worried about the outcome of the race. I'm worried about the process. I'm actually worried about the outcome of the race. I think Pierre Poilievre is a locomotive that's going to smash through Canadian politics. And I think he is a dangerous politician and he is a pronounced threat. And I think that the Liberal Party of Canada ought to be doing more to get ready and to be contesting this guy. I would not wait till September. Don't count on Jean Charest and Patrick Brown to beat this guy up between now and September. He's not getting bruised at all by these guys. And, as you say, I mean, it's just, I hate these, first it was, Pierre Poilievre, he's going to be too extreme. He won't appeal to Conservatives. Then it was, no, he's got monster crowds, but can he sign up the members? Now it's, he's got the members signed up, but, will they turn out? And it's all loser talk. This thing is over, man. I think it's just deadly over. They are crushing.
Yeah.
Any different take on that, Lisa?
No, I took a look at what the voter turnout was for the last two leaderships. And the first leadership post Harper was like 52% voter turnout on 140,000 memberships. Last time we had over 200,000, 250 memberships, and they had like a 61% turnout. I think people are motivated. I think they're going to vote. And if, it's a numbers game. If he's put in 300,000 and he gets 60% of his people to show up, guess what? He's going to win. I mean, that's just the way it is. And for me, the important piece is what happens next. And does he listen to the people around him? Like who advises Pierre? Like I sat with him. Nobody tells Pierre what to do. Pierre is very single-minded, single-focused. He runs his own campaigns. He runs his own question period. He does his own analysis, his own graphics. He does everything by himself. But at some point, you're going to have to listen to somebody else. And I want to know who that is.
I would just say one thing, that the quality of his memberships, having been through this a few times, the quality of his memberships, I'm also certain, are way better than the quality of Brown's memberships. The people who are Poilievre members are people that came to a rally of his and then signed up, or signed up online as a response to something he said online. Brown's members are signed up through ethnic brokers who go out and sign up their Gurdwara or sign up their network of people. Those people have no affinity to the campaign. They may never even heard of Pierre Poilievre. That is a group that you have to work hard to get out. Pierre's people, I think, are going to want to vote for him.
Yeah, I agree completely. He's His 315,000 is going to result in 313,000 votes. Like, it's just going to be, his turnout will be bigger than the numbers that Lisa just highlighted, I think. And those numbers are big, 52 and 61%. Those are big numbers.
Yeah.
And huge numbers. And I think we'll see that they will turn out their members, because those people are driven by anxiety and grievance and the hope that he will light the match that they want to see set blaze.
So, interestingly, Lisa, I just a few hours ago had a conversation for the Herle Burley podcast with Corey Tonight, of course, fresh off the Ford victory. And he's unwilling to get into the federal leadership race. He doesn't think it's in Ford's interest for anybody in that world to get involved in the race. And so he wasn't going to proclaim who he thought should win. But he said something really interesting to me. He made it very clear, and Scott, I'm going to your point about the juggernaut of Poilievre. He made it very clear that he did not think it was remotely possible to win an election on the platform that Poilievre is running on, or the way Poilievre is running. And he thought the most difficult thing for Poilievre was going to be to pivot away from this kind of campaign to a campaign that might win a general election. And he said if he was Trudeau, he'd call the election in September and crush him before he had a chance to execute the pivot. That's how weak he thinks Poilievre actually is right now in the general public.
This is my point. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with that all the way down the line. I think that Poilievre is going to be much more successful at making the pivot than Corey does, because I think that he may find it harder to win on these issues that he's campaigning on, but I don't think the way in which Pierre Poilievre campaigns will shift. So I think what will happen is the economy continues to be weak and halting and listless. And I think he will just transfer the focus of grievance away from mandates and those kinds of issues, but particularly light up that conservative coalition voter, and he'll move it into economic distress and economic alienation. That we got an economy that's serving the professional class of pals that surround Trudeau, and leaves the rest of us out there in the cold and good and screwed. I think so I can see a natural migration, and I don't think that Trudeau is going to call a campaign in an election campaign in September, but it speaks to my point, which is I would not stop. Now, I was talking to a senior Liberal this morning. I know this. We're starting to sound like a TV program, right? I was talking to a senior Liberal at Senior Liberal, the Senior Liberal catalog. I reached
breaking news banner across the bottom here.
I picked up the Senior Liberal catalog, and I picked up my favorite Senior Liberal model and dialed them up, and and they're saying, look, let this thing go for a bit, and then we get to September, and then I'm like, no. This guy's going to win. Start going at him now. Like last week, this vaccines mandate private members bill, to me, you know what? So you're for polio, you're for diphtheria, you're for heartworm, for the love of fuck. Go at this. I would take that thing and I would say, you know what, Liberals, it's a gift. Do not wait. Do not try to remind people of this thing in October. Go now. Start defining them. I would put someone on them. I've said this before, but I would take a talented, hardcore backbencher who can go on TV and throw fire, and I would put that person on him right now, antagonize him, challenge him, get it going. I would start bruising him up and making him work harder than Jean Charest and Patrick Brown make him work.
All right, Herle Burleyites. These next couple of weeks, we're going to dive deep into what I think is both a surprising and, even better than that, potentially hopeful climate message. Let me verbally underline potentially, because it involves an idea about government policy that isn't yet in place, or maybe even thought about. It comes from our presenting sponsor TELUS, and how, as a company driven by social purpose, they put the well-being of customers, communities, and the planet first. Here's the idea. Digital policy is climate policy, or at least the evidence dramatically suggests it should be. It comes from Farpoint Report. Farpoint is an independent technology consultancy based in the UK. When you boil it all down, the key finding is that best practice digital policy must be embedded in Canada's climate policy in order to reach our commitment to net zero by 2050. Let me give you some stats. With more widespread digital adoption, i.e. high-speed connectivity across all of rural and urban Canada, we could see a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of between 120 to 190 megatons. That's the equivalent of 40 to 60% of our Paris targets. More of us could work effectively from home, access healthcare and education more efficiently. Businesses could operate more efficiently and successfully with digital tools. Think of the impact of fewer cars and trucks on the road, shorter, more efficient routes for trains, planes, and cargo ships. Entire sectors like energy, industry, transport, land use, waste, and agriculture would see dramatic reductions in their emissions through digital optimization. It all comes down to finding a way to make sure we're all digitally included in the most efficient way possible. That's TELUS's hope. But there's a barrier to all of this that we've talked about here before. It's the spectrum squatting going on right now by regional carriers that keeps entire communities from participating in high-speed connectivity. Don't fret if you've forgotten the details. We're going to talk a lot more about it next week. Lisa, what do you think about Poilievre's positioning right now?
So I would say that if Mr. Trudeau were to call an election in September, I think he would be surprised to the outcome and it wouldn't go necessarily in his favor as strongly as what Corey thought. And the reason being is that the problem with Pierre's supporters is that the longer away you get from this leadership race, the more the fight goes out. These people would love nothing better than to have Trudeau call an election in September because the fight will happen right away. And that's what they want. They want the battle of Pierre and Justin. And they would get motivated and they would get out and vote. And they would be hardcore motivated. Are there enough of them? I don't know. But there could be. There really could be, especially if they join up with haters. And if you don't have a long runway to go after Pierre, like Scott was saying, he's going to be able to, manipulate the way in which the narrative goes in the short period of time. And I don't think it goes necessarily the way that the Liberals would think it would go if they called an early election. All that being said, look, I think the PMB that Pierre introduced, I thought it was an interesting tactic because I'm thinking, what is he worried about? Why did he feel he needed to go that far? Because it opens you up far more to criticism than it does keep your 150,000 folks who are anti-mandate in your fold. And I'll tell you, I said the other day, and I believe this to be true, that if you look at Ontario, Doug Ford threw people out of his caucus for not being vaccinated or not disclosing their vaccination status. And he won a resounding majority. So tell me where Ontario point of view is, right? And then Pierre
That's
brings
Corey's
in this
point.
PNB.
Exactly.
And then the PMB comes, but the amount of trolls and bots that I got on my Twitter feed, I didn't tweet it out. I said it on another program. And boy, they just came hard after me. So they are totally motivated and they will get people out to vote as best they can in this short. It's too close to this time of leadership for them to call an election. I think it would be, it would not be the result they anticipate.
Well, regardless of whether or not they call an election, the question about where Poilievre's taking things, because I have a hard time seeing him doing a pivot, you folks, because if there was one thing that it seemed to me from Jenny and from many, many others that got under their skin about O'Toole, it was the bait and switch leadership campaign that he ran. It was the attempt at a pivot away from his leadership positioning to an election positioning that angered people in the party against him. Poilievre, they were carrying the spear on that message against O'Toole, point number one. Point number two is I kind of get the impression they think they can win this way. I think they think there's enough people out there that if they motivate them and get them out to vote, they can win on this platform. I don't think they're planning to transition into a more moderate cocoon. I don't think that.
100%. I 100% agree with you. And you and I had the benefit of knowing Jenny well and talking with her often. And God knows I love her to death. I just think that she's involved in an enterprise of historic distress. And I think that Pierre Poilievre has to be stopped. He is the fight of our lives, in my view. I think the next election is going to be the most important election maybe of my adult lifetime, in all honesty. In every campaign that's ever, and every party minister always says that their campaign is of historic significance. I think this next one will be, because I think this is an undiluted brand of politics that if it succeeds, it will be copied. And if it's copied, it is bad news for Canada. And I just think it's vital that this guy be stopped. But I don't think he's going to stop himself. I don't think that the Conservative Party and another candidate's going to stop him. I don't think he's going to stop himself by pivoting. Like Thatcher, this lady's not for turning. And, he's going to go hard. And they definitely believe that they can win this way. And I don't think that Liberals should just, smugly assume that it's impossible for him to win this way, especially if we're in a time of economic distress. And so I think, you've got, as his opponent, you've got to try to start working now to determine what issues you will permit him and not permit him to have. If he owns the economy and makes that a matter of grievance, protest politics, well, that's going to be a big problem for an incumbent government who, after all, doesn't control the global economy, but may find itself saddled with its bruises and warts. So I can't say it enough. I think that, you've got to put every ounce into this battle, and I think it starts yesterday, not, September.
Yeah, but you know what? As you see all these central bankers starting to come out and give mea culpas about how the inflation wasn't transitory after all, maybe we didn't get it right. I mean, that's just proof point for him. Like he was railing at firing people, and then all of a sudden they're going, yeah, I guess we didn't really do as good a job as we could. And yeah, we really are accountable. I mean, people are just going to point to that. To your point, Scott, about having a hold on the economy, right? So you're going to get people voting for Pierre who are going to say, he doesn't really mean that stuff. That other stuff, he doesn't really mean it. And I don't know if he does mean it or not. I can't speak for him, but they're gonna look at the connection with the convoy. They're gonna look at the connection with the Bitcoin, and they're gonna say, yeah, he's not gonna do that. And they're gonna hold their nose if they're holding their nose, and they're gonna vote in favor of him because they want to get rid of Trudeau. And I think that's what this comes down to. It's gonna be like Kathleen Wynne all over again.
Well, that's why you got to make them wear every ounce of those sins. And I would take that private member's bill and I would tattoo it all over them. And that means with, Liberal voters, even New Democratic voters, then that means that they are reminded day in and day out of what they don't like about the guy. And it doesn't get faded and it doesn't get morphed. And I think it means that as a government, you've got to take firm control of the economic agenda and define it again on terms of your own liking. Right now, this government, both in policy and in politics, appears to be adrift on the economy. And you are just begging to get tagged by Pierre Poilievre with this issue.
Well, CN's birthday was this week. The railway, our sponsor, was founded on June 6th, 1919. In recent years, CN has taken to celebrating the anniversary by giving back to the communities along its network. Working with the charitable fund that relies on donations from its current and retired employees, CN singles out worthy projects for financial help, with a particular focus on volunteering. Let me give you an example. In Montreal, a group of parents decided 10 years ago to establish a project that would provide housing stability, independence, and dignity to those with special needs. One of those parents was a former CN employee, and the company paid attention. La Part à Moi was exactly the sort of cause CN and its community fund want to support. Since 2012, the fund has channeled more than $400,000 to this group, and CN itself has sent a donation of $300,000. Today, La Part à Moi has a facility in Saint-Hubert, on Montreal's South Shore. Residents have their own studio apartments, and each is entitled to a place for life in the residence. How's that for an amazing guarantee in a market where stable, affordable housing is more elusive than ever? La Part à Moi has full-time staff. It offers shared meals and organized support. The goal is to enhance residents' integration into society. Simply put, La Part à Moi represents the best of Canada. CN and its railroaders are absolutely delighted to see the project succeed. All this month, CN will be staging events highlighting similar causes and projects in the communities where it operates. Because that, dear listeners, is what good neighbors do. Okay, let's look at the other folks for a second.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at Herle. Let's just start with one simple fact I can't get my head around. How does Herle win if he's not ahead of Brown? And there's no evidence he's ahead of Brown.
Because memberships aren't necessarily tagged to ridings yet, right? It's not a popularity contest. You can sell 150,000 memberships. If they're all in Surrey, BC, Brampton, Ontario, Halifax, Nova Scotia, it doesn't get you the points you need. So what Herle's team are saying is, we've got these ridings in Quebec, and we're going to win all of Quebec, and that's 7,300 points or 730 points, 7,300 points, I guess. And that matters. And that's that's the tack that they're going to take. And then they'll pick up the red portions that Peter MacKay picked up before. Atlantic Canada, parts of Toronto, maybe. I don't know what the GTA is going to do because Pierre's pretty strong in the GTA. And that was part of McKay's ride into the final ballot, was the fact that GTA came out for him.
And then Brown, work me through this. And again, Scott, just park on the sidelines for a second because I'm first interested in Lisa's reaction to this, which is, I mean, Brown has run no public campaign whatsoever, other than showing up at the debates he was obligated to be at. There's been no public component to his campaign. I see very few interviews with him. I don't see him trying to sway the public discourse around the leadership. He's working on a micro sales tactic. So let's say he had enough to win. Mm-hmm. What is the legitimacy in the party of a victory that is derived by private sales to 150,000 brown people across the country that have never been members of the party and nobody knows? And he didn't win over conservatives. He just swamped the party with a bunch of new people. What is the legitimacy of that win? Would the caucus even tolerate it?
Yeah, they will. And I would say that micro-targeting through Facebook, through Twitter, through all the other social media challenges or platforms of specific ridings across the country is pretty much what you do in general elections now. And that's where you win as well. It's about going after a particular group of voters in a particular community and making the promise or doing the work or having the right cultural person in place that is going to get that vote out to you for the general election. So I think it's exactly the same, because the way we structure it, 338 ridings, you have to get 100 points in each. And he is going after those specific ridings, and he's making sure that he has the right number of people in all of these ridings. And if he wins across the country, then he wins across the country, and the caucus will go, wow, what just happened? And it's no different than a handful of ridings in Quebec making all the difference in either Andrew Scheer's campaign or in Aaron O'Toole's campaign. No different at all, just a different flavor. And maybe you don't like the fact that it's racialized Canadians, but suck it up. That's the way it is. There's no difference between going to dairy farmers, going to gunnies, or going to the cultural communities and shoring up your voting.
Yeah, because I was thinking about, it's interesting because I was thinking about, Alison Redford, who won the Conservative leadership in Alberta by getting teachers and nurses to sign up and vote for her, which perfectly legitimate tactic. But I think when things got rough for her, she didn't have much of a base in the party.
And that's the danger, right? It's the danger of the party turning on you. And Michael Chong's bill that the Conservatives always agree that they're going to abide by, or they have at least for the past couple of sittings of Parliament, is the danger zone. Before, in the past, there was no danger zone because caucus couldn't rise up and evict you. Now they can.
Yeah. Scott, what do you think about all this? You're back you can come back now.
Okay. Well, that's great. Just a second. I'm just about finished rolling the dough. I'm going to spread the mozzarella and I'll be with you. I think it's an interesting thought exercise. I think that you guys are right, that there is a odd contradiction, and I think it's a flat out contradiction between a one person, one vote system that permits that kind of electoral dynamic with the leader, but the Reform Act gives you a kind of an old fashioned British conservative caucus gets to sack the leader. It hasn't come to blows, but there's an inherent contradiction. You guys hire him, we may fire him or her. But I do think it's a thought exercise. I think it is a pure thought exercise because I think that Charest has no path. So I just don't think, and I think it's being exposed. And this is all it's not even spin, it's feeble spin. It's just syllables. It's just, they're just, characters in a tweet. They don't even merit serious contemplation, the arguments. Well, maybe you just count by numbers, but what we want to do is, win in places that the party hasn't won, like whatever, right? Whatever, right? Like take a bow, it's over. And I don't believe that Patrick Brown he may come second, but I think it's 150 will translate into a lot fewer than 50% of those will come out to vote. And that's that. And I just don't think there's any stopping Pierre Poilievre. I think he's the first ballot certain winner of this thing. And I think that's what the party wants. I think that's what the party's going to get. And I think everybody better strap up because this thing's going to get crazy.
All right. Lisa, we have a segment of this show called the Clipping of the Day.
Okay.
Clipping of the Week. And today, our clipping comes from the Globe and Mail, courtesy of Jeff Gray and Dustin Cook. And here's a segment from it. As Ontario Liberals look to rebuild after their devastating result in last week's provincial election, former Finance Minister Greg Sorbera says it's time to consider what he admits is a pie-in-the-sky idea, merging his party with the province's NDP. He's floating the concept just as Ontario Liberals start to ponder new ideas to revive their ailing party. If I could wave a magic wand, and given that both opposition parties are without leaders, I would be advocating that each of the parties dissolve themselves and enter into a merger that would create the Liberal Democratic Party of Ontario, Mr. Sorbera said. Lisa Raitt, what do you think?
So this isn't Reform and the Progressive Conservatives coming together federally. It's because at least they're of the same ilk. I think NDP and Liberal are just too different. Lots of folks say that they're progressive, but other than what we're seeing in Ottawa right now in terms of this supply agreement, I don't see them under the same platform. I don't see them under the same umbrella. I know MPs and MPPs from both of those parties, and I don't see them sitting in the same caucus, quite frankly. I don't, maybe the Liberals are willing to put aside what their ideologies are in order to win power, but I don't think the NDP are.
Scott, you were quoted in this article.
Oh, what did Scott say?
Bullshit. Basically, I can't remember what my exact quote is, but listen, if that's a pie in the sky if merging the NDP and Liberals after last week's vote is a pie in the sky idea, then that is a grave insult to pie, which is one of my favorite things. So stop it. I mean, part of my critique, and I've argued about this for a few days already with people. I mean, I actually think there's a bunch of things that are wrong with this. First of all, there is this unstated, sometimes explicitly stated argument that Lisa teases at, which is that, there's a progressive side to the political spectrum. It's and there's two parties there. And the implication is this kind of, if it weren't just for some legacy and ego and hubris on the part of the parties, that's artificial. Fundamentally, they're the same thing. They're both progressives and they could just come together, unite, and conservatives could never get elected. And I think that's wrong in 100 different ways. First of all, I don't think that Liberals and NDP are the same. The NDP is fundamentally an ideological party. It professes to be an ideological party. If you have a drink with a New Democrat and tell them they're not ideological, they'll get pissed at you and throw the drink in your face, right? Liberals embrace the opportunistic, pragmatic, centrist, weather vane politics that has guided the party forever. And, some people say those things are cynical. I actually think those things allow you to tack to the right place, given what the challenges are. So if the country's looking for fiscal conservatism, like it was in the 1990s, because that was the most pronounced threat to our well-being, then you get Chrétien and Martin. And if it's looking for something that's a little bit more socially focused, then you get Trudeau in 2015 and 2019. And that's that. So those things just don't fit together. The Liberal Party isn't and ought not to be an ideological party. And then beyond it, the other argument that's inherent in all of this is that, the problem is just that we haven't actually come together. Like it isn't. It's like, how about, just fix yourself. Okay, Liberal Party, just fix yourself. Okay, pick a good leader, put forward a good argument, be about something, and, take the living tar out of your opponent. Don't just go, well, I guess we have to abandon our party label and recreate ourselves. Like, do the hard goddamn work.
But
leaving aside all the substantive differences between the parties, I mean, just on a purely tactical level, the Liberal Party is a party that for the last 40 years, since the end of the Big Blue dynasty in 1985, for the last 40 years, the Liberal Party wins more often than it loses. The NDP won once in a fluke. And the other time when they had a real chance to win, which was 2018, they couldn't do it. I mean, is the Liberal brand so weakened by the last two elections that it needs to consider throwing its lot in with the NDP, who can't win in Ontario.
No, I'm with Scott on this. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's grasping at straws. And I think for me, I got to tell you what I view this is I view it as an election of personality. It's a cult of personality, just like some conservatives view that as long as we're running against Justin Trudeau, no matter who we put up, we're never going to win because he's just that damn popular. Doug Ford may be the same thing, where whoever you put up against him, you're just not going to win, no matter what your policies are. So you wait it out, and you wait out to see when they actually leave and they move on, and then you got a chance, and you got to be ready for that one. Unless you put up somebody who has the equal amount of Ford Nation-y stuff in the province of Ontario, but I think that's what you're dealing with.
The only asterisk I would add to that, and this is a point that you make, David, so I want to credit you with this thought, but because of your Saskatchewan background. The next election for the Ontario Liberals is existential, because if it comes in with single-digit seats for the third time in a row, then it will be curtains. Because a centrist party that exists fundamentally to win elections, when it can't win elections and when it's pushed to the margins, then it will starve and die. And so, like the Liberal Party did in Saskatchewan, so it must pick a charismatic, capable leader. It must light up people and interest people and bring a real challenge. And if it doesn't after this next election, you won't have to worry about a merger, because you'll just be, reading from the Common Book of Prayer and, putting in a pine box.
Right. All right. Well, this takes us, interestingly, to the federal Liberal leadership contest. Having all vigorously agreed on that subject, this takes us to the federal Liberal leadership issue, which is, by the time of 2025, that will be 10 years for Trudeau. That's a long time to be the prime minister. He will be going for a fourth consecutive mandate. I think Mackenzie King did that, and nobody else. So is Poilievre going to be running against Trudeau, or is he going to be running against somebody else? And what's in the interest of the Liberal Party in that issue?
What do you think, Scott?
I want to start with the second half of the question, because that's where I am focused. I don't think, when you look at the kind of challenge that Pierre Poilievre presents, because I'm like you, David, I don't think that Pierre Poilievre is going to try to pull off some like big bait and switch or some big pivot and suddenly become a centrist Albany Club conservative. He won't. He's going to run like he is now. I don't like the way any of the obvious potential successors to Trudeau stack up in that fight. I think that even as bruised and dented as the Trudeau brand is, and I think it has been, I think that those successors will put up a weaker battle. I think they're juicier targets for Pierre Poilievre in many ways. And I would much rather see Trudeau do two things. One, stay. Two, improve. Like, I'd like to see him literally, honest to God, I mean it. Like, I want him. Look, this is Rocky 3, okay? This is the way I look at it, okay? It's Rocky 3, okay? And Clubber Lang is demanding a title fight, right? And Mick says to Trudeau, Mick says to him, right? I've given you 10 other guys to fight in this last time, and these are contenders that allowed you to defend your crown and make some money, okay? O'Toole, Scheer, okay? I mean, you beat them on split decisions, you made your money, but this guy, Justin, is a wrecking machine, right? And so Trudeau has got to change the way he trains, get back to what brought him there in 2015. He needs Apollo Creed to get back in the ring with him and set him straight and take on Clubber Lang. And this is Rocky 3. And I want Trudeau. I want the Trudeau who fought in 2015, or something that's a renewed version of that. And I don't like the look of any of the potential successors and how they stack up against Pierre.
Yeah. So if you thought you had any Gen Z listeners, now you have none.
There we
after
go.
that.
Gone.
That's exactly
they're gone.
right.
They hit the doors. They're out of here.
All the way back to Rocky 3, not even 7 or anything like that.
Was that Mr. T as Clubber Lang? Is
Absolutely.
That who? Okay,
Yeah,
I was thinking Dolph Lundgren. I mean, wow. If I have to stretch, then
I
we're
will
really
break you.
stretching. So who do I want the next leader of the Conservative Party to run against, not Trudeau. Not Trudeau.
Is that right, eh?
Not
Why is that?
Trudeau.
Tell me why.
I don't think he's beatable. I have come to the conclusion that whatever happens to him, unless the economy is completely in the toilet, and people are in ration lines and the gas stations are replete with lots of people looking for cheaper gas. I don't see it. And I think he will deke enough and tack enough to get to the point where he's not going to be truly hated on the level of hate that could possibly come his way. That all being said, it's his decision. And if there's something better out there for him than being the only prime minister to be able to pull this off, then he'll do it. He's still young. And if he doesn't have anything else out there to go to, then this is pretty a sweet gig. Why would you want to leave it? And,
Nobody ever leaves it. Nobody's ever left it.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever quit this job thinking that they could win another election. Nobody in history.
Yeah, there you go.
Has ever done that.
I think you could win. I mean, as I said, there has to be the big caveat of if the economy is in the complete shitter, then yeah, Conservatives do have a chance. But take a look at what's happening right now. Some people in the last election felt that the Liberals were going to be a better manager of the economy than Conservatives were.
Right. Well, there's just one thing I'd put forward as a thought experiment. As Scott says, we're doing thought experiments today, is, going back to my conversation earlier today with Corey, we're talking about the Ford's success at peeling away working class voters from the NDP. And, he was of the view that the woke approach to politics, the identity-focused approach to politics that is rife through both the Liberal and the NDP right now is really driving a wedge between those parties and working class voters. And who's a greater symbol of that approach to politics in Canada than Justin Trudeau?
Mm-hmm. Chrystia Freeland?
Mm-hmm. Mark Carney?
I'm sorry, but if you combine that with, the label of elite and how well you wear it on your designer jacket, and that's what worries me. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's what worries me. I think that there's a resilience and a sturdiness and an ability to connect, maybe reconnect for Trudeau that's unproven in the others. And I just think this election is so seminal, so vital, so important. It's beyond who wins government. It's whether that kind of politics succeeds. You just can't afford to lose. I'm not even obsessed about winning. I'm just saying, you can't afford to lose if you're running against Pierre Poilievre. You can't afford to let that triumph.
Scott, you don't think he's not demonic? I mean, he's not an evil creature. I mean, it's Canada. You can't really get too far out ahead of the professional public service in terms of making a mess of this government or this country.
I have no confidence in that when it comes to Pierre Poilievre. The guy put forward a private member's bill that says, you know what? Let's let polio reign free. I'm just not this guy's a different beast. He's a different beast and a different breed. And you yourself said, you know what? He follows his own light and no one else's. So
I want to go to you, Lisa. What is the difference then between the real Pierre Poilievre and the illusion that he's creating for us? Is he actually is he a reasonable person? If I sat down and talked with him, which I've not had the opportunity to do, would I think he was a reasonable and smart person?
Are you on the same side of an issue with them? Then you'll enjoy the conversation.
Okay.
If you're not, he will never cede any ground on the topic. That's the best way I can put it. So when I say that I wonder who's around him, is you don't always get it right. I'm not always right. You're not always right. Scott's not always right. And sometimes you've got to hear other points of view. I'd really like to know who advises him. Is it John Baird, who is one of the co-chairs of his campaign? And if that's the case, I got a lot of comfort. I think John's got a good head on his shoulders, and I think he understands retail politics, but he also understands the real world. So for me, that's the tick in the right direction. Does Pierre listen to John? That's what I want to know, because that's what's going to shape and form whatever government he forms.
I just have no faith in any of that. I think this is a guy who takes people's anger, he packages it up, he turns it into sound bites, He returns it to them, and he'll get as many votes as that permits him to have, and then he will govern in faith and in honor to that. And I think that he represents a genuine threat to institutions that unite us. And
No, I don't think
keep
so.
us
I'm
together.
not gonna. No, I'm not with you on that. I was with you all the way to the point where he said he's going to govern on the basis of that. I don't think he will. I don't think he can.
I don't think he cannot.
You think the bureaucrats will rein him in?
I don't think bureaucrats can rein in anybody, but they can play hide the file pretty good.
He will.
You know, that bottom
He'll turn
drawer thing where it
PCO.
goes in and never comes
There'll be
out.
nothing left but blood and shoelaces. I don't think anybody that hides anything, they're going to find themselves.
Yeah, I don't know. This bureaucracy. Listen, go back to Pearson Airport. I mean, the reason why poor Omar is not having any luck is because he's probably being run through a gauntlet of, but minister, you can't do this, but minister, you can't do this, but minister, you can't do this. And that's why they're wearing it right now, because they're not willing to cut through it. You got to cut through it.
Right. Speaking of cutting through it, what do you think of the federal gun legislation last week? Scott, why don't you tell us what you make of the politics of the federal gun legislation last week?
I thought the politics and the substance of it were pretty strong. I think there's a heavy dose of skepticism when people introduce gun initiatives. I think it's a particularly heavy dose of skepticism that confronts liberals, because there's obviously a defined pocket of resistance and opposition to it. But in addition to that, there's a sort of a default assumption that it's all talk and no walk. And so I thought that it actually received a more substantive reception than I might have expected. I think it's like it was received more seriously as real. And, not everybody likes the idea of locking up the market. But I think that, people sort of said, okay, but it is a thing. It isn't a bullshit thing. It isn't just a made up imagined thing. It's a thing. And I think, the other elements that got less profile, like more resources to the border and making sure that you pound away on sentences, those things are critical to keeping it together politically and putting more legs on the stool. If you just say, well, we're going to take away handguns and that's it. I mean, you got to have a law and order dimension to that. So I thought it was pretty good. I also do think that there's in pure politics, I think there's an opportunity to draw Pierre Poilievre in. I noticed that he wasn't super duper vocal on it. It seemed to me like he laid off the pitch. So if I was Marco Mendocino, I'd start walking past his batting cage and say, hey, let's go play ball.
That was the biggest surprise to me, that I was looking for the outrage on Facebook. I was looking for the outrage on Twitter from the conservative side, and I didn't see it. You get your regular comments, but this is akin to, lighting a fire and burning down people's worlds, but they didn't go with that. It wasn't such a big issue as I thought it was going to be. And I would add one thing. It's not only about better sentences, more harsh sentences for possession, but it's bail. They got to deal with the bail stuff. And if they deal with the bail stuff, it's going to be a lot easier, where people are then thinking, do I take the gun with me into the nightclub, or do I leave it in the car and then have to run back to get it before I use it? I mean, that's as fundamental as it comes down to in terms of making sure that people don't use the gun.
Testify. I'm with you.
I think that the gun issue, I was going to only assess it politically because I don't know what it means substantively. I think it is useful politically when conservatives rise to the bait, because when it comes to guns, most Canadians prefer fewer of them to more of them, and many prefer none of them to some of them at all. So if you've got one party that looks like they support lots of guns and another party that says they don't think there should be so many guns, most people are going to line up with the party against the fewer guns. But it's largely unrelated to public safety, and Liberals don't get generally how Canadians think about safety and crime. And the Department of Justice in Ottawa not only disagrees with what Canadians think about crime, they actively hate the Canadians who think that about crime. And so it is. So, what the message to Canadians in that week was that the Liberals got tougher on gun control, and then consecutive sentences were struck down by the Supreme Court.
Right.
And so there's a mixed message out there about crime and safety. And I continue to encourage Liberals to ask themselves why they are so strongly preferred to the Conservatives on the issue of gun control. But the Conservatives are seen as much more likely to reduce crime in society than Liberals are. So what are we missing in our message to Canadians about safety that is not captured by our attitude about guns? And it means we've got to get more serious about the border. It means we've got to get more serious about gang activity. It means we've got to get tougher on sentences. That's what people are looking for. Yes, sure, stop the legal trade of guns. It probably is a source of guns, but it isn't the crime problem in the country. Lisa?
Mandatory minimums were a winner for us. Absolute winner. People loved it, whether or not they were right or wrong, but they liked the notion that if you did a certain crime, there was an absolute amount of time that you were going to go to jail. And the bail thing for me is, I can't overemphasize it, guys. If you know that you're going to be locked up until your trial, you're not taking that gun with you. You are not going to be taking the chance that you're going to be locked up to take your freedom away. And it works. These deterrents actually do friggin' work. And as a result, I think that notion that mandatory minimums were bad, that it disincentives, it's disproportionate in terms of what parts of Canadians are being impacted, whereas Canadians are just thinking, I want bad people off the streets. I don't want my kids to be shot by bad people. And we had 2 incidents in school with machetes or something like that, Scott, here in the GTA recently, that was BB guns. Kids walked into school with BB guns.
That's right.
I mean, insane.
Did Sam get in trouble for that?
No.
I was looking up, where's my kid today?
Can't be. Yeah.
But it's crazy. I mean, if they don't, has my kid seen a handgun at school? Yeah, he has. Does that terrify me? 100%. That somebody thought they could bring a handgun to school.
Yeah. But your point, David, is so important. I'll just reiterate it, I guess, which is action on guns does not mean action on crime. And I think, Liberals do have a hard time getting their head around that. And even when they have a multi-point package, they make sure that they put all those other measures that we're talking about at the bottom. And it seems like they just, they just miss that. And it's parties have blind spots, right? Conservatives have a blind spot. They just think nobody agrees with that on guns, and they just go hard at it, and they walk right into the trap and take the cheese. And Liberals have a blind spot when it comes to actually forgetting that you've got to talk about the sentencing and the bail and the crackdown and doing something that goes deeper on gangs.
So do you think this time the reason why Pierre took a pass on it and wasn't as vocal on the gun thing is because the gun lobby isn't as important to him in this leadership race? I mean, isn't that what it comes down to? That
doesn't need them, right?
Beholden to the folks who take out the memberships from the Canadian Firearms Association is no longer there, that he has transcended and he's with other folks now. Because the contrast, that Charest first said he thought that the measures were good and then had to roll back and say, no, we would review all of these laws.
I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting point. The thing that challenges that is a point that we made earlier with respect to vaccine mandates in the private members bill, because that logic, if you extended it, well, even the constituency that he needs even less are those that are riled about vaccines. Surely he owns those folks lock, stock, and barrel and has no need for, no pun intended, and has no need to pander to them any further. And yet he did. And so I wonder if he just smelled a trap.
Though.
He's
got to get them to vote. He's got to get them to vote. And maybe he smelled the trap, but he's got to get these folks to vote for him. And they will stay home if they think he's associated with the WEF or the WHO or any of those things. Like that was a big rumor, right? Somebody that I know, who I derive a service from, whispered in my ear, I saw a picture of him with the WEF and Bill Gates. What does this mean? Can we really trust him? And it's like, wow, yeah. I don't know. Don't. Can we just do the service and not worry about that stuff, please?
All right, we got one last topic here, and I know Lisa's going to have something to say about this, and maybe Scott Reid will have something to say about this too, and I have something to say about it, and that's Bill Morneau.
Christ.
So I don't know if anybody out there remembers, but Bill Morneau used to be the finance minister of Canada. From 2015 to what was it there? 2020?
Yeah,
something like that. And he went off to run for the chairmanship of the OECD and has not been seen or heard from since, until gave a speech last week to the C.D. Howe Institute, an organization he used to chair, sort of a country club for business and fiscal conservative types. And he said, basically, I'm summarizing, but I don't think unfairly, that the Trudeau government does not care about economic growth or economic management. It only wants to spend money. And the country is weaker economically after 7 years of Trudeau than it was when he started. Holy smokes. Lisa, you've sat in a federal cabinet. Can you believe that?
No, I can't. And I don't know if he wanted to come out that strongly. It's one thing to talk about the importance in the future of long-term growth and what the government should be looking at, but to break from this concept that we have of when you're within the cabinet, you have solidarity. And if you were part of the decision making, and even if you weren't part of the decision making, if you're sitting in that cabinet, even if you don't like the decision, you have to go out and you gotta stump for it. And you're a part of it. You have to make sure that you don't break the integrity of the system. And obviously, he didn't care. He felt that it was okay to go into the past and talk about what they did or didn't do when he was there. Maybe he wants to distance himself. I don't see why he needs to. His reputation is far different than the Liberal Party, far bigger than the Liberal Party of Canada, former Minister of Finance. But it was stunning to me. And it's given a lot of ink to what he has said, and they're questioning what it means, when if he was just really out there trying to talk about, we really got to get a handle on long-term growth, message was lost. It all came down to him taking shots at his former colleagues.
Boy, when people leave Trudeau, they leave mad.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting insight. That is an interesting insight. And also when they leave Trudeau, they don't have any particular affinity for team or institution, right? So, to me, what I find so astonishing as a lifelong political hack is that you would so directly unleash fire at your own team. Because the only reason you were finance minister is because you were part of that team and that they promoted you into that position. There's nothing obvious or inevitable about you. You weren't, oh my God, the country's clamoring for your skills at the finance portfolio. But I also it's just absurd on a whole variety of levels, independent of whether you think the critique is sound. It's entire. He was the finance minister, for God's sake, for 5 years.
He was a willing accomplice in whatever it was until he was fired. Yes. He didn't quit on a point of principle. He was fired.
It's like Mrs. O'Leary's cow complaining about the fire department. Hey, you're part of the problem, okay? And I'll tell you the other thing is I thought his prescription betrayed all of the facile, apolitical performance we saw when he was in cabinet. The guy has the political instincts of an ashtray, and his big idea is that we should have a permanent growth commission. His big idea is that we should have an unelected body of people who can provide whispered advice to the governments, like a permanent McDonald commission. It's not even a viable idea. I don't even know if it's a desirable idea. It begs the question of why don't those who are elected have the spine and the strength to implement ideas that are good, if that's what you think is lacking. It just, to me, and of course, if you look at the context of politics of the moment, it just walks straight in to the clubber laying cross. Yeah. That is, let's have more elites. Let's have more detached, professors that are, running the economy and are unacountable. It's a gift to Pierre Poilievre, not that anyone particularly takes it seriously. So I can't see a single basis upon which it's a winner, and I don't think it's held him in any glory either.
So, Lisa, you are, along with Anne McClellan, the Honourable Anne McClellan, co-chairing a group that is trying to drive an economic discussion in Canada and to try to create a centrist-based growth strategy, bipartisan type of approach to growth strategy in the country. What do you think of Morneau's assessment of the Canadian economy?
I think he is correct in pointing out something that everybody points out, which is long-term economic growth is not projected very favorably by the OECD going into the future for Canada. And there's lots of problems and there's lots of reasons. So listen, the Coalition for a Better Future is not about prescribing how to get there. We're not saying put yourself in advisory council in, because we're actually a group of 131 organizations who are happy to give advice if it's being sought. But what we are going to do is we are going to talk about the importance of long-term growth, what it needs to look like, and we're going to measure to see if we are, as a collective, getting there. So every year there's a scorecard, 21 metrics on that scorecard. And we're going to determine how well we're doing. Are we doing what we say we're going to do? Are we reducing poverty? Are we getting broadband into people's houses? Do we have better business investment? Are kids in school, training, or in a job? And if they're not, then we better pay some attention to it, because these are the things that we think are going to be indicative of a successful economy and a successful society. And we're going to talk about it every single year. So it's very different from what Bill was talking about, but the underpinning is the same, which is slow long-term economic growth is helpful to nobody. The demographics are against us in this country. And as a result, the cost of healthcare, and you guys know that I'm very much in tune with what's going on in long-term care and what's going on in the dementia world. Guys, it's a shitstorm coming, and we just don't have enough money in the treasury to deal with it. So we better figure out how we're going to get around this, and damn soon. And that includes having long-term strong economic growth. And if it's critical minerals, great. And if it's something else, fantastic. But let's just get going. And I'll save it for my Hey You, but I'm going to give a shout out to somebody positively who's doing some work in that area.
Great. Well, funnily enough, it is that time. Gordon?
Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats. The Hey Yous are about to begin.
All right. Scott, go first.
My Hey You, since it's our first time to talk about federal politics in a month, David, I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to go straight back to the Liberal Party. And I've said this before. I just want to hammer it. Pierre Poilievre, it is obvious. It is indisputable. He's going to win this leadership race. He is a clear and present danger to the political landscape. And Liberals, you had better take it seriously. Start now. Don't start in September. Don't start in December. Don't start at the next election. Start now. Get a spy on that guy. Have somebody dogging him, challenging him, antagonizing him, making him talk about gun control, making him talk about things he doesn't want to talk about, taking him into fights that he can't resist but are bad for him. Just get in this guy's grill and do it now, because this guy, you don't want to wake up and find that it's too late to really bring the fight.
Excellent. Lisa?
Okay, so not so much political, but more on public policy. I'm going to give my Hey You to Jonathan Wilkinson, who had a very under the radar kind of announcement this week, which I think is huge. And it's geographic tables for province, companies, and feds to come together to figure out, if we're going to transition, what makes sense for this geographic area. Because you're not going to do carbon capture and storage in Quebec. You're going to do it in Alberta. And in Nova Scotia, you may do some stuff with waves and tidal. You also may do a lot of hydrogen. And somewhere you're going to do natural gas. So Jonathan Wilkinson, his idea, he's got people supporting him. He's going to go across the country. And if you are in public policy in a company or in a provincial government or provincial party, take him up on the offer. Get to that table and make a difference, because we are done with talking about the what is going to happen. And now it's going to be the how is this going to happen? And let's just get it done, to quote Doug Ford.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree, Lisa. I've been begging for people to start talking about what we're all going to do for a living when this absolutely necessary energy transition is complete. And God bless you, Jonathan Wilkinson, for starting that process.
Yep.
My Hey You goes out to federal Liberal members of Parliament from Ontario. There is a job opening at the provincial Liberal Party in Ontario. It is a good job. It is a job that, if you have it, will give you a very reasonable prospect of being the next Premier of Ontario. If you have learned some political skills, if you have a little bit of profile from Ottawa, start thinking about whether or not the timing is going to be right in the next couple of years for you to take a run at the provincial leadership. Because we need people of stature, we need people with experience, we need people with some profile. A lot of that will be in the federal caucus. As one cycle comes to an end, maybe another starts. Time to think about it. That's our show for today. I want to thank Scott Reid for being here, and I really want to thank Lisa Raitt for being here with us. Really made this a special program, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank, of course, our presenting sponsor, TELUS, and our sponsor, CN Rail, and all you accursed out there for listening. We'll be back next week with more Curse of Politics.